Today I'm driving around in a 2019 Kawasaki Teryx LE Matrix Camo Gray, which, if I may say so, looks pretty naughty. Add to that the front end grille, the hood, the dual headlights, and this thing just looks aggressive. It's kind of like a Texas bull looking at a stranger. It just looks mean and ready to rumble.
As compared to the base model, the Teryx LE includes a hard roof, 4 LED headlights, 27-inch Maxxis bighorns on 14-inch aluminum wheels, and color-matching suspension components, all for $14,999.
You know how a machine can hold a special place in your heart because of the experience and the memory you have in it? That's what the Kawasaki Teryx is to me, because it was in a Teryx that I really learned how to drive a side-by-side aggressively. It was just me, a Teryx, the Paiute Trail in Utah, and a bunch of fast driving side-by-side dudes, along with a whole lot of rain. And it was in this mix that I learned what you could do in a side-by-side. I also remember being blown away with how capable the Teryx really was. And I remember it was so much fun to just be flying along, hitting the limiter, launching off small whoops with your foot all the way on the floor. And it changed everything for me as to what you could do in a side-by-side.
Being able to launch off small whoops at full throttle is courtesy of a 783cc V-twin cylinder that produces 57 horsepower and 47 pounds of torque.
The V-twin engine is known for having an amazing sound, and it does, it really does. Just listen to it purr. It's a Torquey engine with lots of torque at the low and mid RPM, which means you can spin corners and break the back end loose at will, which makes the Teryx a ton of fun to drive. Now don't get me wrong, it's not going to set any land speed records. It's limited to 50 miles an hour, which is kind of a shame because it has more in the tank, and the suspension would be able to handle the added speed no problem.
The suspension is made up of beefy dual A-arms with 8 inches of travel up front and 8.3 inches of travel in the rear with adjustable preload and Fox 2.0 shocks.
Officially, the Teryx is a recreation utility side-by-side, but with the Fox 2.0 shocks, it's more of a recreation sport side-by-side. You not only can adjust the 24-position clickers on the suspension, but you can also push the Teryx pretty darn hard without it getting out of sorts on the trail. For this type of side-by-side, I'm a big fan of the suspension on the Teryx being a bit on the sportier side. I think from the factory the ride is a little rough, but the good news is I can adjust the clickers to dial it in to a softer ride and find that sweet spot that I like. Now, while I'm a big fan of the sportier suspension, most of the market has gone to a QS3 shock that has 3 ride adjustments, typically normal, firm, and soft. And I think the Teryx would benefit from that, because 24 different choices is a lot of choices for the majority of people. That's kind of like going to the store to get a tomato for a sandwich and having 24 different types of tomatoes to choose from. 3 or 4 choices is plenty. One thing that I've noticed about the suspension, as much as I love it, is that it does have a tendency to push in corners and understeer. And I don't know if that's because of the wheelbase, the steering geometry, or a combination of both of those things. But it is something you have to get used to. The good news is once you get used to it, it's pretty darn easy to figure out exactly what the Teryx is going to do when you push it. A couple of years ago, there were some updates done to the Teryx. It started with the grille and the hood, both of which I like, but the majority of updates were done to the interior cab, and it took the cab from being more of a utilitarian workplace to a comfy family room where you can off-road from it. The ignition switch and the four-wheel drive switch have been moved out from behind the steering wheel and are easy to get to. The dash has two kinds of plastic finishes to give it a more detailed, polished look. There are cubbies all over the dashboard to put stuff, along with cutouts for your aftermarket accessory switches. There's a glove box. The steering wheel, which already is comfortable to grip, now tilts, and there are these high back contour seats that adjust with a slider rather than unbolting them. And the wheel wells and the sitting position in this are super, super comfortable. Oh, and there are the doors that have absolutely no holes in them. Imagine that. The cab of the Teryx is just a good place to be. But there is one thing about the interior of the Teryx that separates it from all the other side-by-sides on the market.
That would be the amount of dedicated storage behind the front seats and in front of the tilting bed. You've got these giant bins with sealed lids, and these things are huge. Just look at what all I have in here. I have a couple of chickens, some celery, potatoes, carrots, onions. You could carry enough food to cook a trailside meal for 25 people and still have enough room in the other bin left over to carry all the pots, pans, and kitchen utensils you'd need to get it done.
And let's not forget the dumping cargo bed with slats and tie downs that'll haul 600 pounds, or the fact that Teryx will tow 1,300 pounds with its 2-inch receiver. And all of this means the Teryx is no stranger to the work part of wreck utility.
I've always felt that the Teryx is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to tackling off-road terrain, and it's set up to do that. It's got a two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive diff lock system that allows me to choose what mode it's in at any given time. It's got a full-length metal skid plate, 11.2 inches of ground clearance, even though it measures out more than that in many spots. It has great engine braking, thanks to the CVT transmission with a clutch in there to keep the belt tight. It's just set up to be an excellent off-roader, and I never wonder if it's going to be able to make it. Like, it'll tackle whatever you throw at it.
The Teryx does, however, have a couple of issues that need to be dealt with.
The first issue is the noise inside the cab. And part of off-roading is taking your friends and family with you and being able to carry on a conversation, which is hard because of the noise. And with the entire industry working to make cabs quieter, that's something Kawasaki is going to have to work on. And it doesn't help that the engine is mounted right here, which leads me to issue number 2, and that's the heat that comes off this section right here on my calf and lower leg, which is noticeable. And during the winter, it's just fine. But all the other seasons of the year, you notice it.
But despite these couple of issues, the Teryx is a favorite because it is so capable and dependable.
The Teryx is one of my favorite side-by-sides, and not just because it holds a special place in my heart, which it does. It'll take you to the most remote places on Earth with a ton of your gear, and it'll work for you when you need it to. I always look for a couple things about a side-by-side or any machine that set it apart. And on the Teryx, that's the sportier suspension with the Fox 2.0 shocks, and that's all the sealed storage behind the front passenger seat. It's fun to drive, it's aggressive looking, it makes a statement, and it comes with a 3-year warranty, which speaks to its durability and build quality. All of these things are what I look for in the side-by-side, and all of these things make me a fan of the Teryx.